Without change, something sleeps inside us. The sleeper must awaken.
Hello and welcome back to another We Ourselves video. And today I want to talk about Ryan Coogler, but I want to talk about him from the point of view of Jordan Peele, who has written, directed, and produced his own original movies. And I want to talk about today how Jordan Peele's journey as a filmmaker is a cautionary tale for Ryan Coogler and what he is doing wrong. As I said before, the discourse around the movie Sinners is interesting to me. You have some people who are so supportive of the movie that they cannot admit any flaws in it. You have some who absolutely hate the movie and are hard-pressed to admit that it has some redeeming qualities. And then you have those who are able to enjoy some things while being critical of other things. I try to be in that category. There are some phenomenal things in the movie, but there are also a lot of problems. Not the least of which is just some basic story elements that are wrong. And for me, when your story is cracked, then that means your foundation is cracked. But today, I want to talk about Jordan Peele because I feel like he is a cautionary tale for what can happen and what I feel will happen to Ryan Coogler if he and the Black community, the audience, the people who are cheerleaders for his current film, are not careful. And what do I mean by that? I think Jordan Peele was in a very similar situation. He didn't have $1 billion plus movie, but he was, like Ryan Coogler, became known and he was able to do his own original Black films or Black-oriented films. Of course, we know he started out with Get Out, which came out in 2017. And like Ryan Coogler, Get Out had a lot of metaphors, analogies, it had visuals, it talked about our place, Black Americans in American society and how we're treated and racism and all of those things. And it was hugely successful. With a budget of only $5 million, that movie grossed worldwide $252. Even if you're generous and say that they spent maybe $15 for marketing, which they probably didn't, that movie, after all is said and done, made well over $100 million of pure profit. But the cautionary tale that I want to say, and the reason that it did well is something that Ryan Coogler has jumped over with Sinners, and he's gone straight to the problem that Jordan Peele is running into. Get Out had legs. It had a decent opening, but it had legs because of word of mouth, because people talked about it. And why did they talk about it? Like Ryan Coogler, you had this Black man doing this Black-oriented film that was telling some hard truths and had a lot of meaning into it. And people could go and watch it, and then they could have discussions afterwards. They would tell people, other people, and they would go and watch it. That film had legs. But the reason that it had legs is not only because it was a good film, not only was it a good story, not only did it have haunting visuals, not only did it have parts that have become part of our cultural zeitgeist. You can make references and people will know it's from this film. You cannot say The Sunken Place without people knowing that it's from this film. And that's the point. What the film had to say was straightforward and you can understand it. They visually gave you all the details. They told you what was going on. So it was easy to understand by a large percentage of those who went to see it. And of course, you could analyze it. You could talk about how it represents this and you could represent that. But at least everybody who went to see the movie were able to understand it. They weren't given a headache because they missed this and they missed that. He had the perfect combination for success. Low budget, well done storytelling, and I personally believe that Jordan Peele is a better storyteller, screenwriter than Ryan Coogler. Ryan Coogler, visually, he's phenomenal. And Jordan Peele isn't bad either, but I think Jordan Peele is a stronger screenwriter. And I think the reason he's a stronger screenwriter is because he did the shows and he had more experience with writing, actually writing material. So I think he's a better storyteller. And so he had a solid story with Get Out. Everybody talked about it. It had legs. It made well over $100 million of profit for the studio after all the expenses and splits and stuff like that. But then Jordan Peele made a mistake. He made the same mistake that Ryan Coogler is doing on his first film that he's written, directed, and produced. Creed was from another project. Black Panther was somebody else's. Fruitville Station was his, but it was based on a real story. This, like Jordan Peele's Get Out, is a first original story by him, directed by him, produced by him. And he's already jumped to the phase that started the downfall for Jordan Peele. And right now, I want to call up a chart on the numbers. Sometimes I use Box Office Mojo, but I really like the numbers because they allow you to do this really neat comparison chart. You can compare as many films as you want to on here. And so what I did, I called up the first 3 Jordan Peele written, directed, and produced movies: Get Out, Us, and Nope. And so as you see, Get Out and Nope almost had the same budget, and they made almost the same amount of money. But the thing that I want to point out, and this is where the cautionary tale for Ryan Coogler begins. If you look at the domestic opening, Get Out had a $33 million, but as people talked about it, and some people went back to see it again, it had legs. And so even though it only started out at $33 million in its first weekend domestic, it went on to make $252. Again, on a budget of $5 million, plus, half of that box office goes to the exhibitors, and then you take out the budget and the marketing costs, still made well over $100 million for the studio. Everybody's hyped. Everybody's ready. The movie was phenomenal. Like I said, some portions of it have come into the pop culture zeitgeist. You mention some things and everybody knows it's from Get Out. So when the second movie was announced, we were all ready. And so as a result, as you see here, it had a $71 million opening with a budget that was $500,000, less than the first one. Again, good recipe for earning a lot of money. But it only earned $3 million more than the previous one, even though it had a much larger box office opening weekend. In fact, it was over twice as large as the first film. Why? Because everybody anticipated it. We all rushed to see it. We wanted to see what he was going to do this time. But something happened. And if people who remember seeing this film, if they are honest, they will tell you. Jordan Peele tried to put too much stuff into this movie. And I don't think the story itself was as clean cut as Get Out. It was not as understandable as Get Out. There were too many things that were unsure, and then you had all the visuals he was throwing at you. All the things that you were told that you were supposed to notice. And in an age of streaming, and I'm going to talk about this, but in an age of streaming, the last thing that you want to do, particularly when you're trying to get people to come back to the theaters, is make a movie that make people long for the ability to reach for a remote control and pause it, okay? Because if you do that, there's a lot of people who are just going to opt to wait until it comes on streaming service so they can do exactly that. That's something that's happening with Sinners. There are some people who will not go and see it in the theater because they want to be able to pause it every 5 seconds and look at all the hidden Easter eggs and things in the movie. In an age of streaming, you really don't want to do a movie that requires people to want to do that. With Jordan Peele, with all the imagery and stuff, and with the rabbits and the underground and all that stuff, it gave you a headache. You're trying to catch everything, and then you have these other people that are coming out and saying that it means this and it means that. After that initial push, when everybody went to see it because they were anticipating something along the lines of Get Out, but they got something that felt way more confusing, it fell off. So instead of it riding that big box office, opening weekend box office, to maybe 300 or 350 or 400 million, it tapped out at only $3 million more than the first one because the movie tried to do too much. Jordan Peele was layering too much stuff in there. You can have all that stuff in there. You can have all the Easter eggs. You can have all the intellectual stuff. You can have all the visual stuff. You can have all the cues for all the people who get it to get excited about seeing it. But you have to have a base story that's easy to understand by a regular audience. Get Out had that, Us didn't. And he suffered because of that. But still, because of the low budget, as you see here, and because it had that huge opening weekend, it managed to scratch out $3 million more than the other one. But the problem had already set in. He was trying to be too clever with his movie instead of sticking to a simple story and then layering all the other stuff on there for all the other people who are going to read all the stuff into it. And the damage was done with Us. Because when you got to Nope, a lot of the audience had soured on Jordan Peele. It's too much. It was a headache trying to figure out all the stuff that he had on screen. And so what happens? Nope only has a $44 million opening, and it doesn't even make as much as the last two movies. And the horrible thing about it is, look at the budget. The budget is $68 million this time instead of $4 or $5 million. So the combination of a much higher budget, plus people don't want to have a headache when they go see a movie because they feel like they're missing everything. And as a result, people did not go back. They did not like Nope as well as Get Out, and so it had a lower opening weekend, and overall it made less money. It only made $172. But again, the problem had already set in, so that by the time he did Monkey Man, it fell off the cliff. Look at the chart. Monkey Man only made $35 million. It was so bad that they won't even tell you how much the budget was. I tried Box Office Mojo and some other ones. They don't tell you how much the budget was. And so after 4 movies out, 7 years, his box office receipts fell off a cliff. Even though Monkey Man was the first not black-oriented movie and he had a different writer, he did not write, produce, and direct. It was too little too late. And I think the starting point was with Us. He tried to do too much. He tried to be too clever with his movie, and that's the same mistake that Ryan Coogler has gone to on his first movie out that's a totally original movie, written, directed, and produced by him. He's jumped to the Us stage of the Jordan Peele career, and I think that's a problem. Because the way people are overanalyzing this movie, Sinners, and they're doing all these things, and they're telling you there's all of this stuff, and if you don't get it, you're low informational, or you're simple. You're making the same mistake that Jordan Peele made. And I'm predicting that his next original movie, whether it's in the Sinners universe or something else, if it's a black-oriented movie, is not going to do as well as Sinners is doing. Because people are going to get tired of all the overanalyzing that's making them feel like they're dumb for not getting it. And that's why I feel like Jordan Peele's journey is a cautionary tale for Ryan Coogler. It's going to be interesting to see what the movie Him does, if he comes back. But again, cautionary tale for Ryan Coogler. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. And as always, like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next video.
The sleeper has awakened!